Manitoba, the comedy capital of the prairie, where the stars are always on ice. It's the CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival, starring Lou Bagoy, Bette McDonald, Al Ray, Don Herron, and Stuart McLean, with your host, Sean Cullen. This week, the CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival presents the CBC Gala. And now, here's Sean Cullen.
Hello, everyone. Hello, every one of you. Yay! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I'm Sean Cullen. Welcome to the CBC Gala here at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. I'm very excited. I just flew in from Los Angeles, and boy, are my arms shallow and self-involved. Tonight, we're going to see some of the biggest stars in the CBC firmament, spreading the gift of comedy like so much margarine across the great bun of this country. CBC Gala. That's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? The CBC isn't the most glamorous institution. I mean, their idea of glitz is putting a new turtleneck on Lyndon McIntyre. And of course, where better to hold the glamorous CBC Gala than in the city of glamour, Winnipeg. Guess Winnipeg, it's beautiful here. It's a dream. I love going out, you know, late at night, and I'm not kidding, it's beautiful. Late at night, you go outside in the very, very cold weather and you hear that tinkle, tinkle, tinkle of the very air freezing. Granules of oxygen falling to the ground. People walking, that's why no one goes out at night, because you'll suffocate. There's no air left. It's like being in space, only with pierogies. Winnipeg is a funny city. It is a funny place. This is where Keanu Reeves came to play Hamlet. So, you've got a sense of humor. And in that vein, many other celebrities are coming to play Hamlet. Cheech Marin is coming to play Hamlet very shortly. Very excited about that. But when they got together and said, where are we going to have the CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival? Winnipeg was on the top of the list. And tonight we're going to see some stars from both CBC television and radio. A word of caution before we continue. You may never have actually seen the radio people before. Now, don't be shocked, because you have a certain kind of perception of what they're going to be, you know, a preconceived notion. And I just met Stuart McLean backstage, and, you know, from the Vinyl Cafe, and he turns out he's a 12-year-old girl. Who knew? He sounds so mature. Sometimes it's easy to forget there's more to CBC than comedy, but it's true. CBC television has been on the air for over 50 years, and throughout that time, they've done an excellent job, year after year, of telling us how they've been on the air for over 50 years. You've got to give the CBC credit, though. It started from nothing, and now it's the leading public broadcaster in the entire country. But let's not forget radio. Now they have a CBC Radio 1, Radio 2, CBC Radio 3, which broadcasts music over the internet. Imagine that. Music over the internet. You can use your $2,000 home computer to simulate a $10 radio. How far have we come? Hooray! Beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to be here in Winnipeg. I can't believe that my legs are my own anymore, because I woke up this morning, my mind was frozen to the pillow. But with a chisel and a blowtorch, I put it back in my brain, and I'm ready to start the show. Now I'm going to cross over to that position over there and introduce our first guest. But I don't want anyone to be alarmed by that. All right. You know, ladies and gentlemen, because tonight's CBC Gala is such a special occasion, we thought we'd start with a guest who reflected the splendor and majesty of Canadian comedy. And who better to do that than our head of state? It was a little bit difficult to book her because last time she came to Winnipeg, she got stuck in a boat. But we managed to get her. And here she is, ladies and gentlemen, our ruler. One of the few sequels that is better than the original. Her Royal Highness, Queen Elizabeth II.
It's a pleasure to be back in the peg. Actually, it's a pleasure to be anywhere. C'est un grand plaisir to be here avec vous ce soir. When I was invited to attend this year's CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival, my response was immediate. Why me? Haven't I suffered enough? They said, "What do you mean, Your Majesty?" I said, "Well, the last time I was here, your city put me on a boat which broke down halfway across the Red River, leaving us completely stranded in the freezing cold. They had to send a second boat to rescue us. They said, 'Your Majesty, you were lucky. Just be grateful they didn't send one of those military helicopters to rescue you.'" On this trip, I came prepared for the weather. Now, I don't go anywhere without my fur-lined bra. Winnipeg is such a lovely city, even though it is full of Ukrainians. But I do have some very fond memories of my last visit to Canada. My favorite event was when I dropped the puck at a Vancouver Canuck game. Hockey is cruel, brutal, and painful, much like having tea with Camilla. Over the past 50 years, it's amazing how our two paths have paralleled each other. We have both dealt with plenty of disasters. CBC crews endured ice storms, floods, and fires. I endured Diana's butler. At home, I watch that Benny Hill fellow. Every time he opens his mouth, he makes a fool of himself. CBC has a similar chap who goes by the name Don Cherry. My life has had its highs and lows. The lows were courtesy of the unrelenting tabloids, and the highs were provided by Prince Harry, if you know what I mean. Well, he must be off. Enjoy the comedy festival. And it's so refreshing to be around people who are funny on purpose. Ta-ta, and have a nice day, eh? Thank you.
Coming up next, a real character, Bette McDonald.
Join us for this year's CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival, March 24th to the 28th. We deliver the laughs.
Fantastic. Are you enjoying yourselves? Of course you are. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, here she is, the reigning queen of the East Coast comedy scene. Please welcome the talented and beautiful Bette McDonald.
Yeah. Hi, dear. How are you? Good, dear. Good, good. Yeah, nice to be here in Winnipeg, dear. I don't thank you. Thanks. I don't find it that cold, dear. Mind you, I live in Cape Breton, eh? An island in the Atlantic Ocean, so I'm used to it. Me and my husband, Gordy, we drove here, eh? Yeah, we did. We left on New Year's Eve, and we got here this morning. We would have been here sooner, dear, but poor Gordy's awful slow to drive, eh? Oh, it's pitiful, dear. When we were going through New Brunswick, I ran into the Tim Hortons, got a medium double-double, caught up with him on foot. Yeah. So I said, listen, Gordy, I'm taking over the driving. Eh? But he don't like that, eh? No, he don't like my driving. Scares him a little. He says it makes his tentacles recede. Yeah? Yeah, apparently. I couldn't even get him to sit on the passenger seat next to me, dear. I had to put him in the trunk. Actually, I had to stuff him in the trunk, dear, because it turns out he's claustrophobic. He made an awful racket driving through Ontario, dear. I could hardly hear the radio. Yeah. Anywho, dear, wouldn't you know we got pulled over by the cops, eh? Wouldn't you know it, eh? And I asked the officer what the problem was, eh? I says, what's the problem, officer? And he told me that my driving was erratic. I said, oh. It was turning you on, wasn't it? I says, listen, officer, you shouldn't be having erratic fantasies about me, dear. I said, I'm a married woman and my husband is right there in the trunk. That's when things took a bit of a nasty turn. Up against the car, he says. And he frisked me. And I gotta tell you, dear, I haven't been felt up like that since me and Gordy went to the drive-in to see A Hard Day's Night. I can't say it was wholly unpleasant. I tried to keep things light, eh? You know, I says, listen, officer, that's not my regular husband. I said, he's just a spare. Now, you know, in case the other one goes flat. Yeah, he didn't find that comical at all, though. Yeah. As a matter of fact, dear, after I leave here, I have to go for a psychiatric evaluation. Yeah. But me and Gordy have been married a long time, eh? It's not easy to be married, is it? No. Oh. No. You gotta work at it, don't you, dear? I got a book for you. I do. Yeah, it's called 101 Ways to Rekindle Your Romance. Oh, yeah. Yeah, hold her back. I read that book, dear. I'll tell you, the first one, I done a bunch of them. Well, there's 101. The first one is dress provocatively. Eh? So I went over to Value Village. And I bought this red and black thing with feathers all over it, eh? brought it back, showed it to Gordy. Well, he thought I hit something on the way home. So that was that one. And we couldn't do the second one, because Gordy said the blood kept rushing to his head. I did that one. You know, they tell you to greet your mate at the door wearing nothing but saran wrap. I done that one. Yeah. Only we were out of saran wrap, so I had to use tin foil. And it hurt. Very pointy tin foil. And then when I opened the door, dear, it wasn't so much Gordy that was standing there as it was our neighbor from down the street, Bobby Crookston. He was collecting for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Apparently now it's personal. Yeah. Anywho, I gotta go, dear. I told Gordy we're gonna drive home. And I told Gordy when we get home, I'm going to help him build a dog house for the cat. No, dear, dog house. Can't go around calling it cat house, dear. Can't go around saying you got a cat house in the backyard. Cripes, dear, there'll be politicians lined up around the block. I'll see you, dear.
Coming up next, the well-versed comedy of Al Ray.
Please put your hands together for the Dark Prince of Canadian comedy, Al Ray.
I know this guy, he's an entomologist, and he's married to an etymologist. And he can tell you about every species of bug and all their attributes and characteristics. And she can take the names of those bugs and she can tell you their origin and their Greek and Latin derivative. And they have no friends. I went to the auto parts shop today to see if I could get some new windshield wipers for my '78 Rabbit. Guy said, that sounds like a fair trade. It's so nice to be inside. It's nice to be out. I'm married and we have a kid, and it's nice to get out. It's hard to get out when you're married, and you know, it's very difficult to plan, and it's expensive. I'll give you an example. Last week my wife and I went to a movie, and what with the babysitter and the movie tickets and the popcorn and the parking and the coffee afterwards, $500. We also bought some crack. We're very happy being a family now and having a kid, but it was hard for me at first. There's a whole new vocabulary I had to learn when I became a parent. Words like prenatal. I didn't know that word. Postnatal. Postpartum depression, which I hear sometimes affects the mother as well. Words like lactating. Lactating, breast pump, nursing bra, restraining order. It's a whole new vocabulary. Well, we got the kid and it's great, and now we're talking about how, you know, she's 10 now, we're talking about having another kid, and sometimes my wife wants to have another kid, and sometimes I forget to take out the garbage. and all bets are off. But because we're a family, you know, my daughter is involved in these conversations, and it's when am I going to get a brother or a sister and stuff, and when are you guys going to make a baby, you know? But her understanding, and this is true, her understanding of sort of how it all works is very rudimentary, based on what my wife told her about the daddy making a seed, and then the mommy takes the seed, and the baby grows in the belly, and that's how she understands it, which is not inaccurate per se, but just simplistic. And so she's involved in these conversations. Sometimes she'll say, well, you guys gonna have a baby or what? And the other night we're talking, and then I go, I don't know. And she goes, well, you gotta make the seed, you know? I said, well, I could make the seed. And she goes, well, but Mommy won't eat the seed, because she's got this conception of it being like an apple tree, you know, like a little kid, right? She goes, but Mommy won't eat the seed. And then her little eyes light up. This is a true story. And she looks at me and she goes, I know what you should do. You should give it to her when she's asleep. One of the things I do is I go to the doctor more regularly, just to make sure I'm okay. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm getting these checkups, and I had to go recently for a rectal examination. And like many of us, I guess, I wrote a poem about it. I'd like to share it with you now. It's called The Rectal Exam. The rectal exam. Okay then, the doctor says, legs up, pants down. I hear the satisfied snap of a plastic glove. Time for a rectal exam, he says. He looks embarrassed, which is encouraging. I notice he's left-handed. I hope you don't feel more creative, I quip. When you're going south, trust a southpaw, he replies. We both laugh away our male uneasiness. In another time and place, I would say that we were bonding. Ever had one of these before, he asks. I smile shyly. I took my ring off, he says, and smiles. But all levity suddenly stops when he inserts a greasy latex digit in to my rectum. And I cry out the name of another doctor. I thank you all very much for coming tonight, and we'll see you again. Good night. Thank you.
Charlie Farquharson, winner of your Disorder Canada, is next.
Our next guest first performed on the CBC in 1936, the first year of CBC radio. He appeared on the very first broadcast day of CBC television in 1952. And CBC says he should be getting his checks for those performances any day now. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a much-beloved comedy icon. He's received countless awards, including the Order of Canada. He's in the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame. Please welcome Charlie Farquharson.
I drove all the way here from Paris Sound because I believe that if the good Lord had meant us human beings to fly, he would never have given us Air Canada. I come with the old second-hand pickup. That's the truck, not the wife. I'm not one of them show business male prigs that thinks harass is two separate words. I know that harass was the premier that was of Ontario that started your uncommonly nonsensical resolution. And his place has now been took by my own private member. I'm talking about Hernia Heaves from Parry Sound, Muskoka. I don't know if he has anything to do with your doer fella, Gary, that works under the golden boy in charge of all your DPs. But I do know he's been awful palsy-walsy, our Ern, with the Premier of Alberta, Calvin Klein. Ain't that his name? The one looks like Fred Flintstone's neighbor, Barney Rubble. He's just found out he's got separators in his cabinet. My God, we've had a separator in our cream shed for 20 years, never give us no trouble at all. But the wife thinks maybe he imported them separators from Quebec, but I don't think so, because the Klein fella has never wanted any of us Eastern creeps and bums in his province, even though he'll accept all of our hazardous wastes. I didn't know what that was, your hazardous waste, until Gene Cretin explained by saying it was federal funds spent outside his own riding of Shawinigan. And when Gene Cretin passed this movement on the floor of the Common House about your coyote discords, that upset both Hernia Heaves and the little Klein. Because they don't believe in your global warnings. Klein says it's just a bunch of old dinosaur farts. Not to mention your brontosaurs and probably your tyrannosauruses. But I say, what about all them city people sitting in their SVUs, guzzling their gas in the rush hour, bumper to bumper, while they all have nocturnal emissions? Not to mention them arsehole spray cans going right up your ozone. But nothing is going to be done about the environmentals in Canada because the minister, without the energy to mind our resources, Herb Dollywally, he drives 2 of them SVUs. So he's just going to sit there in his office in Ottawa and Dollywally doodles all the day. Now, this whole thing started 10 years ago, and I blame Blarney Mulroney. I'll tell you what he did. He invited Ronnie Reagan and his nanny to come to Quebec City to sign the free trades, and Blarney's filly Millie was pregnant at the time, so they just sat around the lobby of the shattered Frontenac and dropped acid rain. And the next day was St. Patrick's Day, and while Ronnie was signing the free trades agreement, Blarney Mulroney sang a little Irish song in Ronnie's ear that told me more than anything what was going to happen in the next 10 years with the free trades. And they'll steal your arse away.
I think everyone agrees. There are 3 things that matter in this life to people in Winnipeg, to people across the prairies, to people around the world. And they are wood, cheese, and children. Wood, cheese, and children. make your life so sweet. Wood, cheese, and children, they make your life complete. When you don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, you're out in the darkness, in the blinding snow. Get yourself some wood, make sure it's dry, set it on fire, and you'll get high on wood, cheese, and children, make your life so sweet. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Cheese and children, they make your life complete. Now you've got a fire, you're feeling fine, unless you've got a chipmunk gnawing on your spine. There's just one thing a chipmunk can't stand. It's a nice chunk of cheese in a man's right hand. And wood, cheese, and children, they make your life so sweet. Wood, cheese, and children, they make your life complete. Now you've got that chipmunk on the run. You can take that cheese and have a little fun. You can dress it as a monkey, hang it in a tree, and the children will thank you for setting them free. For the children will not be free till the little cheese monkey is hung up in a tree. A tree is a creature, it's made of wood, it's a leafy treat, and it looks quite good. So if you feel bad and if you feel sad, get three little things that'll make you feel glad. God made wood, man made cheese, and a woman will make children if you just say please. For cheese and children, make your life so sweet. Hey, with cheese and children, make your life complete. Hey man, reach out to me. Come on, man. Oh. Yes! I'm talking about you. With cheese and children, with cheese and children, with cheese and children. Cheese and children, one's nourishment, one's fun, and one makes heat. Thank you very much.
He's a radio star, and now he plays one on TV. Stuart McLean, next.
Stuart McLean is the author of several best-selling books, host of the CBC's Vinyl Cafe. Stuart is also a real-life university professor. Exciting, isn't it? Amazing achievement for a 12-year-old girl. In fact, attending his performance tonight is worth 3 credits towards an undergraduate degree, so... Thinking about going back to school? DeVry. All right, here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Stuart McLean.
I took a carrot with me to work the other day, and I put it down on my desk, and then I didn't touch it. Not that I'm opposed to eating vegetables. To tell you the truth, I forgot all about the carrot until the next morning, when I came back to work and I found it exactly where I'd left it. Except it didn't look like the same carrot the next morning. It was limp and it was lifeless, and it had lost the crunchiness, which is what attracts you to a carrot, or me to a carrot. Now, I wasn't sure what I should do with my limp carrot. Seemed like a waste to throw it out, but I wasn't about to eat it either. So I decided to do what I do when I'm confronted with a problem which is too big for me. I decided to ignore it and see if it would go away. And darned if my little carrot didn't do its best to do just that. Over the next few days, it began to dry up every day. It shriveled up a little more until after a week, it was a wizened, dehydrated shadow of its former carrot self. And I thought to myself, I guess that's what happens to you when you sit around a third-floor studio day after day. And then I thought, wait a minute, that's what I do day after day. Now, I don't know if you get out much. I know I don't get out much. But when I do, I've noticed that people are a lot more conscientious about drinking water than they used to be. Every second person you pass is carrying a water bottle these days, and up until I watched that little carrot shrivel up, I figured that I absorbed all the water I needed when I showered in the morning. Now I thought if this poor little mummified carrot's life had any meaning, it was to tell me that it was high time for me to get aboard the water wagon. So have you ever tried to drink 8 cups of water in a day? I tried for 2 weeks and found out that, like staying on a diet and following a modest exercise program and not watching cheap talk television, it was just one more in a long list of righteous ambitions destined to humiliate me and send me like a school child to swim in the sorry pool of self-loathing. It's one thing to dream about representing your country in the Olympics and have to face the fact that at 50 you can't run a mile in under 8 minutes, let alone under 4. But it's a failure of an altogether different magnitude to find out you cannot drink 8 glasses of water in a day, even when you set your mind to it. So after 2 weeks, I decided that I was going to do this if it killed me. And I bought myself one of those fancy water bottles, ones you see the kids carrying all the time these days. I got myself a ripstop nylon holster so my bottle would always be within reach. I set my watch to beep every hour. And I promised myself that I was going to empty that water bottle every time my watch beeped if it was the last thing I did. Almost was. By noon on the first day, I was well on my way. By noon, I was driving along the 401 highway, heading for an appointment, and I was feeling pretty pumped up. I'd been up since 7 o'clock, and so far my watch had beeped 5 times, and I'd emptied my water bottle each time it beeped. Don't get ahead of me, ma'am. Buddhists would tell you to stay in the present moment. It was noon, I only had 3 more bottles to go. And that's when it was suddenly brought to my attention that the reason I hadn't been drinking 8 glasses of water a day was simple. Man's body isn't designed to drink 8 glasses of water a day. The notion struck me with the force of a fire hose. I looked out at the window. I looked at the 8 lanes of traffic whizzing around me, at the concrete retaining walls, the narrow shoulders, and I realized I was in serious trouble. I shifted in my seat uncomfortably, and I began to wonder just how many glasses of water a man's bladder, mine, could hold. And what actually happened when there was no room left. I was beginning to feel as if there hadn't been a redundancy built in. I felt a pulsing, stabbing pain, and I left the world of rational thought. As I drove along the highway, my eyes began to narrow, and my tongue began to flip in and out of my mouth. And I entered the world of instinctive behavior. I embraced my lesser reptile self. And all I knew was that I had to get off the highway right away. But even my lizard self could see there were no exits. So have you ever tried to cross your legs while you're driving a car? This is not something you should do at 130 kilometers an hour. And then, somewhere deep in my prehistoric brain, I realized that no matter how fast I drove, I wasn't going to find an exit in time. I realized I needed to find something to pee into or I was going to have an accident, and I'm not talking automotive. So I looked around the car, and all I could see was the water bottle on the seat behind me. This is where I catch up to you. But the water bottle was full, so I drank it. Water went straight to my bladder. Now, if you think driving a car and talking on a cell phone is dangerous, you don't know anything. I didn't care. I had the empty bottle, so I filled it. But I wasn't empty, if you get my drift. By then, I didn't care anymore. I pulled over. Now, this is something you see people doing all the time in the country. You see a car pulled over on the edge of the road. You see a man or a woman walking into the woods at the edge of the road holding a child's hand. Child's a decoy. Well, there were no woods to walk into where I was. There was just me and all of these cars and the shoulder and a concrete wall and the 8 lanes of traffic, about 1,000 cars a minute. Now, there is a certain pose that a man with my problem has to assume if he is about to resolve his problem. And I don't care who you are, you cannot disguise this pose. You can stand by the edge of the road and reach into your pocket and pull out your cell phone and pretend you're talking on the phone. But when it comes to the moment of truth, everyone is going to know exactly what you're doing. So I stood beside my parked car and I'm bouncing from one foot to the other, and I thought to myself, if I was wearing a dress, this would be a lot easier. If only I had a dress on and different plumbing, I could manage this. If I didn't have to aim and shoot, if I could just shoot. I could stand by the roadside and pretend I was looking at birds. And at 110 kilometers an hour, who would notice? But I wasn't wearing a dress. And then I knew what I was going to do. The solution came to me. I would open the hood of the car. I'd lean against the bonnet like I was checking the water level. And while I did that, while I was hidden behind the hood, I would quickly finish what it was that I had started. So I hopped behind the hood and I got into position. And just when I was getting to the crucial moment, well, you know what happens when you have a breakdown on the edge of the highway? Some Anglican stops to help you. So I'm standing there all ready to let go, and this guy pulls over and he gets out of his car and he walks up to me. He says, "What's the problem?" Without thinking, I say, "I think it's flooded." And this guy says, "I'll stick around until it dries out." And that's when my watch beeped. And when I heard my watch beep, you know what I did? I reached for the bottle. And that's when I realized I had to get out of there. I slammed the hood shut and I jumped into my car and I waved at the guy and I drove off, knowing there had to be a Tim Hortons somewhere close by. And as I left, I'm thinking to myself, if only I'd listened to my mother. She always told me to eat my vegetables, and if I'd only eaten that little carrot, none of this would have happened. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, folks, that's our show. What a grand gala it's been. Or gala, if you so choose. When they write the history of CBC galas, this will go down as one of the most gala galas. And then I'm going to go on a vacation to Gala Gala because they say the beaches are beautiful. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's cold. You know, if tonight we've made just one person laugh, I hope it's the person who runs the network. Then we'll be coming back next year. Thanks very much. I've been Sean Cullen. Good night.
I thought to myself, well, I guess that's what happens to you when you sit around a third-floor studio day after day.
We have a problem with the microphone?
Some of you are probably thinking this is part of the act.
How are we there?
Well, we were better before you came on stage, actually. This is what happens when a radio guy tries to come to television.
Special thanks to the Sheraton Winnipeg Hotel, home of the CBC Winnipeg Comedy Festival.